3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our nonprofit empowerment webinar series. We can get a license now. This is number 16. I've been looking forward to this one. Its topic is fundraising, what has changed, what hasn't. And we have a guest who's played a very special role in my life. No, it wasn't Mark Twain. But by the way, before we go any further, I want to introduce our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media. And I can't say enough good about him. He makes sure that we don't have technological hiccups. John, can you take a moment to share the logistics, particularly how people can type in questions and comments?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for joining the Eskin Fundraising Training Summer Series. If you have any questions, at the bottom of your screen, if you're on your laptop, or at the top of the screen, if you're on an iPad, there is a Q&A, and there's a couple of thought bubbles there. Just go click that button, type in your questions, and we will answer those in the order in which we receive them. And if you do experience some internet lag, don't worry, we'll have that. This is a surge time of the day, and it should be only temporary. And that's all I've got, Jim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'm a fan of the power of the simple elegance of thought, simple statements, and I have borrowed a lot of things from our guest, who you'll be hearing from very quickly. He actually had this on his email signature, and I really loved it. You know, the secret of getting ahead is getting started, and I think it's so applicable to the fundraising world, because Larry and I know that there can be a million of excuses not to get started on a fundraising project. The economy's not good. We're waiting for a new board chair. We're waiting for a new president. We're waiting for a new director of development. We're waiting for the stars to align. But the secret is nothing is more important than getting started. I want to give a brief introduction before Fuller one. Our guest is Larry Vaclavik, who is the managing principal of Dini, Spheris, a dynamic fundraising firm headquartered in Houston. We met about 20 years ago. My hair was a different color. I don't know about you, Larry. And I was brand new at my job. I had just got a promotion to become vice president of institutional advancement at Our Lady of the Lake University, which is a proud Catholic university that dates back to 1895. It's run by the wonderful sisters of the Congregation of Divine Providence. And in the year, at the millennium turn, like a lot of other private schools, Our Lady of the Lake was experiencing some enrollment challenges, and it needed an infusion of funds to expand and enrich its academic programs, and it needed help from someone to show the way. So actually, I wasn't part of the decision, but they had at that time selected Dini partners, and Larry was a partner and assigned to us, and I can't say how lucky I was, because talking about getting started, I watched Larry come in, and first he told our board of trustees, you have to give like you've never given before. You have to give 100% board participation at a personally significant level, or else you're not going to have credibility going into the community. Guess what? And the board gave like they never gave before, and they enjoyed it. And then we had a brand new president. We had a brand new vice president, me, and we had a development team. And Larry said, you folks got to ask like you've never asked before, and you're going to enjoy it. And guess what? We asked like we never did before, and we enjoyed it. And finally, Larry said, donors are going to start giving. When you ask, donors are going to give you gifts. And that the more they give you, the more they'll like you. And so it began my lesson. I would say that was the transition point. I went into that position liking fundraising, but because of the engagement, who really became a mentor and coach to me, Larry Vaclavik, I fell in love with fundraising. And I don't think I'd be doing today if it wasn't for Larry. So first, let me welcome Larry. Let me thank you for the critical role you played in my professional journey. Well, let me, before you get a fuller introduction, let me ask you, how the Vaclavik family is spread out over the country, around the world. How is everyone doing?
Everyone's doing well, from Spain to LA to back to the East Coast in Virginia. All Vaclaviks are doing well in this time. So thanks, Jim, for asking.
And thank you very much for joining us. In our audience are a wide range of nonprofit leaders. Some are CEOs and executive directors. Others are directors of development. Others, they work hard. We just don't pay them. They're board members, and we love them all. And we like to say in the nonprofit arena, we have a superpower, and that's passion. Because I can tell you, every person in this webinar, they are passionate about their nonprofit. And taking the words of Mark Twain, you can take that passion and just get started, get going, and you're going to experience success. There are a lot of nonprofits in the country. The last time we added them up, it was about 1.5 million. We have 100,000, Larry, in Texas. We have 6,000 alone in the San Antonio area, and they all do very, very important work. And we like to say that when nonprofits do well, we all do well. And no matter what your mission is, you play a personal role in touching, improving, and saving lives. And so if we have one word of advice, it's get started, but also do not let your foot off the gas pedal. Continue to do what you're doing. And we're going to talk about some of the mechanics. I know there's a temptation to watch what others are doing, because we're all in a position where what we don't know is more than what we do know. But if there ever was a time for boards and management and staff and donors to come together for their nonprofit, this is the time to work together and exercise leadership, because whatever your mission is, it was essential before COVID. I got news for you. It's now even more essential. Larry, we started this in the second show. This is our mantra, and I'd like everyone to type in nonprofit strong. Please type in nonprofit strong. Larry, I guess my second question to you will be, what are we?
Nonprofit strong, and proudly so.
You aced that one, and proudly so. As a point of introduction, after being mentored and learning a lot through my, I guess, in the Karate Kid, they call that guy the sensei, you know, the one who kind of shows you the path. In June of 2018, my wife and I, Andrea, launched Eskin Fundraising Training. We had the privilege of working during my 3 higher education advancement positions with incredible business and community leaders who were so absolutely fearless in everything they did, with one exception, asking for a gift. And so we decided to declare war on the fear of asking for a gift. We have a monthly newsletter, by the way. Everyone is going to receive these slides and the recording. And by the way, if you're not on our newsletter list, just click there and you can add your name to it. And I'm proud to say that last year I published my first book. It's a thin book. It's 80 pages. It's a quick read. And I think that both the professional and volunteer fundraiser will find it helpful. We're kind of proud of the webinar series. We're going to be holding these every Wednesday between 4 and 5 Central Time. And we like to say that we are a learning community. I mean, I know some things. I know that Larry knows a lot of things, but we like to say between us and all of you, we have a lot of wisdom in the webinar audience that we are a learning community and we probably can answer any question you have. We're going to ask you a little question right now. We like to say that there are 4 distinct parts to fundraising, and we're going to say you should continue with all 4 of them right now. Discovery, identifying who do you want to ask for a gift and why. Cultivating, forging a personal and emotional bond between the donor prospect and the mission of your organization. Third is the obvious. That's the who, what, when, where, how, for how much we ask. And we close the loop with stewardship because we do a good job in acknowledging and thanking Larry for his gift. We're going to come back next year and we're going to ask Larry not only to continue that gift, but to consider increasing it. So we want direction from you. We have 2 polls, and we want you now to type in what topic would you like to see addressed. Is it A, discovery? Is it B, cultivation? Is it C, solicitation? Or is it D, stewardship? Larry, it's surprising. We've been getting some different responses each week.
Exactly.
So let's see, John, are we getting some responses?
We are. I'm just waiting for a few more folks to answer. We've got about half that have answered. Let's get the other half involved.
Okay. This is...
There they come. And here's the poll results.
And let's see. And oh, how about that? They stewardship. I think that's a very savvy group. Okay, we got one more question to ask you. And our fundraisers, A, type in A if you think they're born, or B if you think they're made. So this should be easier because you only have 2 options.
And here are your results.
Let's see. 90%. By the way, I like that because Larry and I are in the business of making those fundraisers. So we're about to bring Larry on in 1 minute. I just want to borrow a quote from one of my other mentors, Marv Roy from Clifton Park, New York. And he says, more money equals more mission. In other words, money is not the end. It's just a means to the end. And philanthropy is not just money, but it's the giving of time and money to improve the life of others. And by the way, usually those 2 gifts come together. And let me bring on, I'm going to give you a short introduction. Larry has been in the business for, was it 61 years? No, 31 years. And has raised cumulatively, we just can't keep up. I think now, I'll tell you what, we're going to have to share a glass of something when you hit the $1 billion mark. But Larry has raised over $600 million for good causes. So Larry, again, I want to thank you for what you've done for the nonprofit sector and for all the Jessicans that you've mentored and help us become passionate about fundraising. Thank you for your role. Larry, you ready for some questions?
I'm ready for some questions. Grateful to be here, and thank you to everyone who has joined.
Okay. Hey, let's jump to an immediate issue. What are the biggest challenges in transitioning from face-to-face to virtual fundraising?
Well, I think that it's the challenge that everybody faces when we put technology between human lives, and that it's the challenge of staying connected, being able to establish the kind of warmth and sensitivity and really donor care that you express when you're face to face. The beautiful thing about technology and the way that it's developed today is Zoom calls, I've found in many, many ways over these last several months have created newer opportunities for a different level of sharing. And so I haven't found them to be a block, but an opportunity. So Main thing is, how do you use these tools effectively to stay connected?
That leads to our next question. What are
Okay.
your suggestions on the way that both professional and volunteer fundraisers can become more effective at virtual cultivation and solicitation?
You know, the reality is that we have to deal with the environment that we're in. And it sounds like we may be in this environment for some time. And so I think being donor sensitive is to start with the question with donors: do you want to meet? And some donors today, we're finding, do want to meet, and they want to have a conversation. Perhaps it's with masks, perhaps it's across a long table, but it's also across technology. And it's just developing the comfort of being able to say the words and exhibit the kind of passion you have for your institution across these means. And so working on the ability to speak and interact and share and solicit over this great tool.
Larry, you have a rich 31-year perspective at the business and joy of fundraising. Pre-COVID, there was a time before COVID. What were some of the major changes you were observing in fundraising? And then what hasn't changed?
You know, clearly technology and the tools that from donor research to all the kinds of analytics tools, the introduction of those tools changed the way we looked at the data that supported fundraising. Certainly the tools, we just the small tool of the little GPS device made getting around and doing the kinds of calls that we need to do a lot easier when you're going city to city to do fundraising. Changes like the Donor Advised Fund, the creation of the Donor Advised Fund, and that whole universe of funding and fundraising as a tremendous change. So there are lots of things. What hasn't changed is fundamentally, this remains a human business. It remains a business about care, about passion, about causes that are important, and about mission. One big change that I would say, Jim, actually I want to talk about two. One big change is impact. People, donors looking for impact rather than just support. They want to know that the gift today makes a difference. The other is confidence. The knowing and having confidence in the institution, its leadership, its plan, and the ability to succeed. Impact and confidence are two things that are more important today more than ever.
Good. Hey, when we worked together about 20 years ago, and again, my hair was a different color. I think your hair stayed the same color. You were a huge advocate because I loved reading the book. It was called The 7 Faces of Philanthropy, and it was based on a huge research project exploring the insights into the psychology, the motivations, and the trigger points of major gift donors. Do you think that research, the content and the findings are still relevant in the year 2020?
So it's been 26 years since that book was published. Of course, lots of things that have changed. Let me give you one element of it that's changed. If the major donors who were the research participants in that study, they were born between 1914 and 1934. Those same 60 and 80-year-olds today are 86 to 106 years old. So the people who we would do that same research on today are a generation younger. They were born between 1960 and 1980. So what changes is the values that drive donors. Many of the research about motivations, I would say, we find to be very similar. Are the percentages the same? I'm not so sure, but are people motivated by engagement? Are they motivated by networking? Are they motivated by name on a facility? Are they motivated by, are they simply self-motivated? All of those things I find to be true, but what's important to donors certainly is shifted generationally. And that's where I go back to impact and confidence.
Hey, let's have a little fun here. You've raised more than $600 million for institutions and good causes. And I know this would be tough, but can you share a favorite solicitation story?
Sure. You know, as consultants, one of the things that we're not as frequently involved in solicitations, although I grew up as a major gift officer. I've actually been in this field for 38 years, 39 years now. So a couple of stories, one from a consulting perspective. There was an owner of an NFL team who lived across the street from a school that we were consulting for. And was worth at the time somewhere between 80 and $100 million, had a great capacity to support this school. And so the school trustees would walk across the street while he was on his front porch and visit. They would bring him cakes on his birthday. They would bring flowers to his wife. So they developed this great across the street relationship. And along the way, when one of the trustees went to make that typical visit, he turned to her and said, I know why you're here. If I make the gift that you want me to make, will you still cross that street to come see me? And it was one of the most important lessons I learned in my career about how important it is for friendships to be genuine and for us to really take the lives of those we're interacting with seriously. So to me, that's one of the most beautiful fundraising stories that I've had a privilege to be a part of. Another, if I can quickly do it, was a gentleman who said, we simply, the quick thought is every campaign needs an unmoved mover. And simply being able in every campaign to be able to say to somebody, you have to be the first person to give. Without you, there's no one else to make the stars move. And so using that approach to fundraising has been one of the most exciting things I've done campaign after campaign after campaign, to be able to find and to motivate that unmoved mover.
I think that kind of tracks into our next question. Larry, I can remember you showing slides like I'm doing right now, and you put out this one and it stuck with me. And it was saying, what is the wow of the project you are raising money for? You know, every group should say, what's going to set off the emotion wow? And from your experience, where do such inspiring ideas come from and mature?
So one of the things I'm sort of on a bandwagon about this because I think it speaks to our culture right now is campaigns and visions for campaigns shouldn't be spin. They should be authentic. So they come from the institution itself. Oftentimes we're too close to our own institutions. One of the benefits of counsel is we're oftentimes strangers. We come in, get to listen and hear and say, you know what you're doing? Here's the magnificent thing that you're doing. And those visions today, one of the things that has to change, gift sizes are bigger, needs are bigger, goals are more stretching, is our visions have to be ever more compelling. We have to be able to say, what's the game-changing impact of this annual fund, of this capital campaign, of this endowment? What's the game-changing impact?
Yeah. Hey, we have a lot of small to mid-sized nonprofits participating today.
Sure.
And for those organizations that are considering a major gift or capital campaign for the very first time, how can they analyze their databases of annual giving donors for good prospects for major gifts?
You know, there's the wonderful, the easy tool is the largest donors and the frequent donors. Then there's electronic screening. There's another tool that we shouldn't overlook in our arsenal, and that is the individual conversation. It's simply going on discovery calls and talking to people about, if you had the chance to dream and make the greatest impact gift that you could make on this institution, you've loved and supported its mission for years, what would that be, and what would we need to do to get there? So simply taking that stage of discovery and doing that face-to-face and not relying entirely on data alone. Data and anecdote.
It is just human nature for people, and that includes a lot of board members, to be frightened of asking for a gift. how can we help those folks overcome the fear of asking for a gift?
You know, I think it's much like you learn how to fly a plane. You have to learn the concepts of aeronautics. You've got to do flight simulation, and then you go up with an instructor. The same way, we need to share the concepts of donor motivations, donor-centered fundraising, the language of a solicitation. We do role play. Role play is one of the most effective ways to help people develop confidence. Again, back to that notion of confidence. And finally, going with. People going together with the seasoned peers, helping people to have that first win. Once you have a win, the door's open. You know, you've tasted the candy at that point.
Hey, what lessons did we learn from the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009 and some of the recent disasters in responding to adverse economic conditions?
So Houston had 200,000 homes that were affected by Tropical Storm Harvey. So I want to add that one to the mix. One of the things that we learned is don't stop. Don't put your mission on hold. Your mission is as vital today, and it becomes even more vital when your funding falls away. We were doing a church campaign, one of the largest Episcopal church campaigns in the United States at the time. It was a $55 million campaign. Hurricane Harvey hit, people swam out of their homes. Major donors swam out of their homes in this environment. So it was a time of true dislocation. What we did was we paused and then went back and visited with individual donors and said, should we start again? And we let their energy drive the restart. So the restart didn't come from us. It was people saying, this is our community. We want to keep going. And so I think the message there is don't pause, listen, and keep moving. And I think that's true today in the midst of this COVID environment.
Yeah. Okay. How do you recommend fundraisers respond to a major gift donor right now who says, you know, my financial situation is fine right now, but I'm concerned. I don't know about the future, which could hold them back from making a larger and longer term commitment. How do you respond to that type of donor? John, did we lose Larry? Hey, John, are you there?
Yes, Larry, we lost your audio.
Okay, well, can you type a message to him?
Yes.
Okay. That usually happens to me.
There we go. Are we good?
There we are.
There we go. No, sorry about that.
No worries.
All that animation so let me go back. Give me the question again, Jim, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, and this one is, we're talking, a nonprofit's talking to a major gift donor, and they're saying, hey, they're okay right now. They're financing. The stock market looks beautiful, but I am so concerned that I don't know about the future, and that's holding me back from making a larger and multi-year pledge commitment. How do you respond to that donor?
So there's two ways. One of the ways to do that is to say, Mr., Mrs. Smith, Jane, Tom, as you think about this campaign, I would like to ask you to consider a gift. In the end, a total gift of this size. You may want to decide that you can only pledge a certain amount today, and then tell us when we can come back and have a second conversation if the opportunities change. That's one way to do it. You certainly can move forward with a straight up ask. And that's kind of what I'd say immediately from there. Give the chance for an investment now.
Okay, okay. Hey, for those nonprofits, and there are many of them, that are being especially squeezed hard by the current economic climate, do you think they can emphasize in their fundraising appeals that the gifts dollars will preserve staff positions?
For many who took advantage of the PPP loans, I would not do that because donors already have a sense you've already been helped in terms of staffing. What you can say, and I would say with great passion, is this is about supporting the mission. One of the trends that we're seeing in major donors is a willingness to step forward with more unrestricted giving in order to just sustain the mission, to sustain the institution. So I'd emphasize sustainability over staffing.
Hey, so many of us are working from home. What challenges in particular do you think does this present to the fundraiser?
One common theme that we hear, and it's professionally acknowledged, is the danger of working without boundaries, quite frankly, of getting up earlier and working later, and in some degree inflicting that upon donors too. I think the challenge, quite frankly, is to say there need to be days where I'm in contact with my donors and consistently being in touch with donors. And that doesn't always have to be by Zoom. Several clients are really taking advantage of texting as a way to just touch base and say, how are you? What's going on? News today? Hope you're well. Here's something for you.
Larry, are you taking tough questions?
Oh, I'm happy to take tough questions.
Okay, here we go. If a nonprofit's back is pushed against the wall, when is it appropriate for their board and management to consider things like merger, consolidation, partnerships, or even dissolution?
So your back really has to be pushed against the wall for this one. It's when you lose the confidence that you have a sustainable mission. If there's redundancy in your organization, that may make sense that there is a merger opportunity here where, by redundancy, it's not absolute. Perhaps you're doing the same thing as another organization. That's a great opportunity to look for strengthening another organization if you can expand capacity. So I think it's looking and saying, how do we make a winning opportunity out of a challenging environment? So those can be strategies that work well. Sadly, toughly, but well.
Yeah. If a nonprofit had been considering a major gift initiative or even a capital campaign before COVID, how do you recommend they proceed?
Move forward, being donor sensitive. One of the things that I would add to that four-part donor circle, if it was Larry looking at this in the COVID world, is we certainly have discovery, we've got cultivation. There's a time now of accompaniment, and that's journeying with donors. And so it may be spending time with them before we're at the point of solicitation, but that can all be part of moving a campaign forward. So if there was a campaign on the books, I'd move it forward, but with a heightened donor sensitivity.
You know, nonprofits are always in a stronger position when they can point to 100% board participation in annual giving. And each board member should be challenged to give at, quote, a personally significant level. If we were to put Warren Buffett, you, and me together, probably we would have 3 different interpretations of personally significant level. How do you define a personally significant giving level?
You know, it kind of goes back to that notion of a planned gift. A planned gift is one where someone's had to think about by what mechanisms do I fund this gift? I think everybody in a campaign on a board should make a demonstrable gift, one that others can look to and say, you know what, Jim, Larry, and Warren all made appropriate gifts because they stopped, they planned, they stepped forward at a level that reflects a significant, meaningful, impactful investment on their part.
At some time, we're going to get to the other side of this crisis. And what advice do you have for nonprofits to do right now so they'll be in a strong position when finally this crisis comes to an end?
You know, literally for the CEOs, the board members that are with us today, building and strengthening the board. We always say we'd love to strengthen the board, but just don't have time. This is a great time to have conversations, to enlist people to share mission and impact. So building the board, certainly. Being able to address a reality that many nonprofits didn't have cash reserves. This time, along with 2008, 9, and 10, should remind us every nonprofit institution should have cash reserves and build those cash reserves to be able to operate when we have to shut in, when something hits us that was unexpected. So I think being able to look at how are we positioned to raise those dollars going forward is an important lesson learned from this time.
Thank you. John, do we have any questions in the queue?
Just one right now, and I will ask that now. Okay. It is from Francis, and Francis asks, how do you find donors in a community that would not be characterized as having a culture of giving?
Say, hey, Larry, we have a deal. If it's an easy question, I get it. It's a tough one. You get it. This one's yours.
Okay, got it. Talking. It literally is. In every community, there are people who are bankers for the community. There are people who are who have political influence in a community. It's a matter of going out and having conversation with those who are in leadership roles in the community, and they will know where affluence is in that community, even if there's not a history of philanthropic performance. So conversation. That's
go back.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so much of successful fundraising is built around having conversation. It's listening and asking.
Not complicated, is it?
Not really. It's fun.
Hey,
instead
what
of
advice do you have for nonprofits? Yeah. What advice do you have for nonprofits who have to hire right now development officers who can be effective both in face-to-face and virtual solicitation?
So there are just some basic characteristics that are important. They come in different packages, as it were, of skill sets, but certainly people who are articulate, people who can speak on their feet, people who have passion, people who are self-confident. They may be humble, but absolutely self-confident when it comes to the mission of the institution and the ability to ask. Having experience of asking. You can always grow and develop the numbers with which one asks, but having that fundamental experience of having asked in the past is important.
Right. Hey, John, any other questions in the queue? I have a few others, but do you have any other in the queue?
Not right now.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Okay, and by the way, you can continue. I'm going to begin in a few minutes to kind of wrap up and bring Larry in and out of the conversation for reinforcement. But let's flip that question. What advice would you have for people who are thinking about, we want to work in the nonprofit sector, we want to enter the fundraising profession? What advice would you have to them?
First thing is to think of this. This is the most rewarding kind of work that I think a person, lots of different kinds of work are rewarding, but it's been rewarding every day of my career. So bring your passion to the table. Come with passion, come with interest, study, learn, watch, observe, study the best in the business. That was one of the great pieces of advice I got early in my career, is watch people who are really good, trustees, CEOs, other development professionals, pick up their tools and their tips and put them to use. Yeah,
well, you sure can learn. When you're the second person on an ask early in your career, that's the equivalent of a PhD program. Larry, I'll tell you what, if there's some other questions that come in, we're going to pick them up, John. Okay, so let us know. I want to summarize some of the major points you've made, Larry. I'm going to bring you in and out. First of all, fundraising is no stranger to change. And we had Melissa Brown on about 6 weeks ago. She edited Giving USA for 10 years. And she pointed out that actually philanthropy in the early part was responding more robustly to COVID than it did to the recession of 08 and 09. Fundraising always finds a way to adapt to change. And Larry's saying, yes, there's a fundraiser inside all of us. And I like to refer to the Jeffersonian virtues of having a knowing head and an honest heart. And Larry would say, what did Mark Twain say? Don't delay, get started. Get started. One of the things I really appreciate that I learned from Larry, we talk about ethics in fundraising. We talk about being competitive. And one of the things I'll be forever grateful, Larry, you are as ethical and as competitive in the same package as anyone I know. And I decided to emulate that in the 20 years that followed, because I actually think that goes hand in hand. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I think being competitive is part of this business. There's an abundance of dollars available in our community for every cause. If you look out the windows and say, is there enough wealth in this community to fund this? The answer is absolutely yes. The difference is relationships and the emotional distance. So if we're fiercely ethical, we can build those kind of relationships and we can be successful in this business of raising major gifts.
Yeah. One of the things too I learned from you that as a fundraiser, success is not measured just by what you do, but it's how you can motivate. If you work with a development committee, if you work with a president or a leadership cabinet, if you work with other donors who have relationships, success for a fundraiser is measured what you motivate others to do and accomplish.
Absolutely.
Would you like to share something on that?
Sure. The real heroes in fundraising are everybody else. It's the people who deliver the product of our nonprofit institutions. It's those who lead, those who do other things. What we do is help to make connections possible to let heroes do what they do.
Well put. Well put. And again, one of the things I learned, Larry, you know, we heard the word relationship a lot, and I'm a connoisseur of bad movies, okay? And I remember once about 12 o'clock at night watching a bad movie, and this frustrated lady says, a relationship is something you have until something better comes along. Larry always taught us our business is not to nurture relationships, but to nurture genuine friendships. I think that's so important. And Larry, I think part of the nature of a donor friendship is, you know, you're not always going to hear the word yes. It's strong enough. You can get yes one time. You go back maybe 2 years later on a different project and you hear it no for various reasons, but your friendship stays in place.
Absolutely. If you think of the Aristotelian perspective on love is about the good of the other. And so if we're oriented to what's in the best interests of our friends, those who are our donors, we think about what's the right timing for them. What's the right opportunity for them? It's not what's the right opportunity for me. It's helping them to be successful in what they want to do, which is to be a great philanthropist.
Hi, John, by the way, we're doing great on time. Thank you, Larry. But I just want to check. Any other questions appear in the queue?
No, sir. We have a very timid audience today.
Very timid today. Join in,
folks. Larry's teaching them. He taught me. Now he's teaching them. Larry, one of the things you taught me that there's no cookie cutter approach, and it sounds like a cliche, but every donor is different. And don't think that you can take some by the number approach. Everyone is different in their interests and their priorities and their values, and there should be a different fundraising approach.
Absolutely. This is even more heightened right now. If you look at the spectrum of people reacting in the way people had, there's sort of a continuum of fear to no fear. And depending on where one is, that's where they're going to react in terms of being asked to consider a gift opportunity. We have to be sensitive to where people are on that continuum. To those who are filled with bravado, let's talk. To those who are worrying about the end of the world, we need to say, let's walk along together because I'll help you get through this.
Yeah, well put. Another thing you said, I don't think it's so much being an extrovert, but fundraisers believe. First of all, they believe in their mission. They believe in the leadership team in their organization, and they believe in themselves. And they believe that they're asking for a cause that deserves the best. And so confidence, not in the term of being cocky, but confidence is part of a winning ingredient of a volunteer and professional fundraiser.
Exactly. Confidence to me is more like a core value for a fundraiser. I personally am a bit of an introvert, a bit of a monk, but when I'm in the business of fundraising, my job is,
I can't believe that.
Yeah, I really am. But for the causes that we support, we have to be confident. We've got to be that way.
Yeah, they deserve nothing less, right?
Exactly.
And again, you're saying big gifts come from big visions. And that is that word. I remember when you put that slide up in front of us 20 years ago, and we were looking at different projects, and you said, what is the wow? It's vision drives money.
Absolutely. So often we deal with organizations that early on in a campaign have a number in their mind for where they want, what they want to raise. And the question we have to get to is why? The why is the impact is critical. If you're going to build a building, what's the building going to do that changes this institution and those who come from it? Whether it's healthcare, whether it's the arts, wherever it is.
And we talked about, by the way, and we got, Larry, you were great on time. I really impacted me. We didn't really pay much time. We'll take a minute. I remember most of them. Take a second to summarize what the 7 phases are. 7 phases.
Sure. So the 7 phases basically reflect sort of a set of values that donors have, and I'll just kind of run through them quickly. The first group is the communitarians, who think about what makes San Antonio, a Dallas-Fort Worth, a Houston the best. The second are the devout, whose giving is motivated because their sense of God or the divine calls them to give accordingly. Then there are those who are repayers. Their life has been changed by some event. They were cared for through COVID. All of a sudden, they get the importance of medicine and medical research. They want to pay back or pay forward, very often pay forward. The fourth group is investors. Those for whom this whole business of philanthropy there's a lot of the fun of beating the government for tax dollars and having a bit of a fun structuring a gift. So the investors. There are those who we used to talk about socialites. They're really networkers. They're the people who have the fun of, they love to just build relationships, and those have benefits in many, many ways for people. So the networkers, the galas, the golf tournaments, the shooters, and the dodgeballers. Then the altruist. The altruists are the ones who are self-motivated. There are several donors in San Antonio that I know who you don't call on. They make that decision and historically have done so. Give broadly and well. And lastly, dynast. And dynast, very often we think of, multiple generations of giving. Very often a dynast in our world today is a family who perhaps is a beneficiary of tech money and grew up around a table watching mom and dad begin to make philanthropic gifts and observed and learned how to do philanthropy. So they're professional philanthropists from generation to generation.
And I'll just remember, Larry, I remember when you worked with our development team and we took our list of major gift prospects and we matched them up to each of those faces. I think this book is still a great read.
It's a great read. It's a great way to help.
And the good thing,
Keep going.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
I'm saying we are getting, we're getting affirmation that virtual fundraising works. I've got reports from some colleagues of $1 million asks that have been made virtually. And that goes against almost everything in our grain because the face-to-face meeting, particularly the solicitation for the major gift, the gold standard was eyeball to eyeball. But, now we have limitations. In some cases, it's really up to the donor. If the donor allows you in the room and you're wearing your mask and keeping your 6 feet, but we are seeing affirmation that virtual fundraising is working. It's working fine.
One of the things that I would encourage is if you think about one of the things that we miss with mask is the movement of our mouths and our noses that help to communicate. That's present in a virtual fundraising environment. We've got gift situations where we're working on right now of $10 and $15 million gifts and really significant multi tens of $1 million gifts that are going to be asked just over the internet like this, letting people see your face.
Larry, one of my mentors in the area of communications and PR and branding is the great Lionel Souza, and he has led, I think, a total of 3 of my live or virtual workshops. And he said, quite simply, our job is to get the donor to know, like, and trust us. That's all. Know, like, and trust. But particularly, we're in the trust business. And I know this is a kind of a tough question for 1 minute. What goes into the business of building trust with the donor?
I think to a great degree, personal vulnerability is a piece of that, being able to develop an honest relationship. One in which we can be our very selves and let others be their very selves. When you go back to being in a trust business, it's just another way of saying friendship. And you look at how do you develop friendships. You get to know each other, you test your relationship, you build confidence because people deliver on the need of the moment. And so build trust, you build friendships.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is fierce competition because when you're a donor, you're not choosing between the good and the bad. You're choosing between the good and the good. And how does a nonprofit get somebody to move them to the top of their giving list?
So I would start with kind of turning the equation upside down and say, rather than living in a competitive world so much, we live in a world of extraordinary abundance. Even in the COVID world, it's extraordinary abundance. I've only seen one person I know give everything they've given away. In 40 years of observing, there's always more. And so it's by our passion, conviction, the quality of our plan that we can say to somebody, here's an organization I'd like you to test, to trust, and we're investment worthy, but being courageous about that.
Right. And I'd like to say this is an appropriate time for, again, the wisdom of the hall, for boards and management staff to gather together and ask themselves quite candidly, what void does their nonprofit fill, not met by any other organization, How do you contribute to the economy and quality of life? And if your nonprofit didn't exist, what would happen to those you serve? This is a good time to have those honest conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, there is the question of sort of what's our magic? What's the difference that we make that changes our world? Uh, every business, we hope, is in the business to be the most excellent at what they do. So how are we the most excellent at what we do? And if we're not there yet, how will fundraising help us to get there?
At the end of the day, the big goal is not to perpetuate organizations, but is to drive positive societal change and achieve the maximum impact. And again, your organizations, as you remember Mark Twain, let's just get going. And remember Jim Eskin said, don't take your foot off the gas pedal, but be determining how can you achieve the greatest possible impact. And Larry, I still remember, you got me to love the word wow. What is your wow?
Absolutely. Again, it's that point of excellence. Where's the magic for us?
And probably too, this is the time you have to have 100% board participation in annual giving. Now remember, those gifts might look very differently because we discussed a personally significant level will vary. But funders are going to be looking. That'll be maybe one of their specific questions. What percentage of your board gives? And the one that say 100%, they move to the top of the list. Those who have under 100%, they move to the bottom of a very, very big stack. We were talking, philanthropy is resilient. You know, we have always been adapting to changes in societal needs and technology and the economy. So and I like to say, Larry, before, you know, nonprofits knew how to stretch nickels into dimes, now they know how to stretch them into quarters. And we're seeing too, we just got the numbers for 2019 hitting a record 450 billion. But notice that dip in 2009, philanthropy came back stronger than ever after that Great Recession, okay? The philanthropy, and it mimics the stock market. So, you know, that's very encouraging. That's our number one predictor of philanthropy is the stock market, and it is upholding, and it had another good day. Another thing that hasn't changed, that the name of the game is individuals. Now, don't get us wrong. Larry and I love foundations. We love corporations, but you see the lion's share of money comes from individuals, and they should dominate your prospect list, because actually, if you take the 68%, and then you add the 9% from bequests, which is individuals who have passed on, and then take the half of foundations, which are family foundation, that adds up to a whopping 88%. So your strategy should emphasize gifts from individuals. I remember hearing that from you time and time again. And by the way, too, here's another interesting statistic. There used to be the 80-20 rule that 80% of, you know, outputs come from 20% of the inputs, and that applied to philanthropy. And now that has shifted. This was about 2 years ago. If you take that $450 billion, about 88% of that comes from just 12% of the donors. Okay, and then Larry was the one who got our leg to lake so excited about a major gifts initiative, because by far that's the most efficient and productive way. I know people have special events, but typically about half the cost of the event goes to help the money raised, goes to covering the cost of the event. There's nothing more efficient than major gift, one-on-one, personal solicitation, face-to-face, virtually, however. Major gifts is the way to raise serious money. And fundraising now, we're telling to board members, if in your organization, they used to say, oh, don't worry about that. Jim and Larry will handle that. You don't have a board seat to waste. I think now more than ever, board members have to commit to their personal giving and getting of gifts. Because, you know, the boat that finished first, everyone can pull an oar. There's, and by the way, too, we like to say that, you know, there's a lot more in fundraising and engaging board members than just making the ask. A big part of it is get your board members to wet their feet by making thank you calls to your major gift donors. And guess what? Usually you don't ask during that thank you call, but there's a direct relation, unsolicited calls from board members to donors usually drives up the gift. And also remember, this is not a zero-sum game. We are not taking anything away from donors. And Larry and I have been involved in enough solicitations that we know actually, we really think donors get more out of the philanthropic transaction than the benefactor. We've been there. It's just the way to make a person feel great. And we're finding out that you can fundraise from home. But also, you know, people are home a lot more. So we're saying you should step up your communication with your donors. If it's going to be by text, if it's going to be by email, if it's going to be by a virtual or a video conferencing, keep up. You're more likely to find people. Step up your communication with your donors. And again, Larry, you said, you know, check in on them. What are we doing with family? We're calling in on our family. How are you doing? You're telling how you're doing. You're asking if you can do anything for them. Treat your donors like family. Nothing lasts forever. We're going to get to the other side of this. And to the extent that you can share positive news, how people are responding and making gifts, put a spotlight on them. We could use all more good news. Finally, inspire donors about what their gifts will do. And I'm going to rush ahead to the finals. Oh, here's my, Larry, this is my money back guarantee. The more you ask, the more you get. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree.
Okay, and this is, I'm guilty of showing this quote a lot, but it gives me goosebumps. This is something that John F. Kennedy said, part of the commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963. And he said, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit the same small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we're all mortal. Larry, when I read that, I get goosebumps. It's like President Kennedy is speaking to us right now.
Absolutely.
I want to thank our producer, John Largent. Another great show. And Larry, I want to thank you for the leadership that you have provided so many great organizations and also so many individuals like Jim Eskin that you served as a coach and a mentor and a friend to that helped inspire me to my professional journey. Thank you.
Jim, it's been a privilege of a lifetime. So thank you. And thank you for having me, and to everyone here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this afternoon.
Thank you. And we are going to put a quick summary on LinkedIn, and then everybody's going to be sent. John does a little magic hat and edits the recording and the slides, and we're going to send that to everybody who registered, and we're also going to post that on LinkedIn and Facebook. And so thank you for joining us, and stay safe. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, John.
All right. Bye, all.